Hello, and thank you once again for joining us for Parenting in a Pandemic. As usual, I'm joined by Professor Matt Sanders, our resident parenting expert and a man with more than 40 years' experience in helping families to find their way. Hello again, Matt.
Hello, Katrina. Nice to be here.
Now, Matt, parents have certainly had to really step up in the first half of this year, dealing with so many new challenges from homeschooling to working from home and often juggling the two side by side. I certainly know how tough it has been to keep my kids on the educational path while trying to do my job.
Absolutely. I think many of us have really had a taste now of what it's like to be a teacher, and I think there are lots of parents and grandparents for that matter, who've got a newfound respect for just the importance of teaching, the importance of education, and the importance of just having a good connection with a child's school.
So we've got three girls aged 11, turning 12 next week, 8 and 5. Now, our eldest girl was diagnosed with ADD when she was in grade 4. She started high school this year. Our middle girl was just diagnosed with ADHD this year. And then, of course, our youngest has also started prep this year as well. And yeah, all that in the middle of trying to homeschool them together. What are you doing?
Athletics.
So what about the maths study that your revision is supposed to do?
It's been tough because I myself work full-time and I work full-time from home. Definitely have a better appreciation for teachers now. And they really brought their own game out during this whole thing. So they worked with us. And you can imagine that they had so many kids and the teachers were still giving attention to each and every single parent. And I did at one point email Yumeko's teacher and say, look, we're having a hard time here. And that's when she came back and understood and was like, just focus on this area. So that was really good. We felt supported, and I definitely know I could have rung her and said, oh my God, and she would have understood. She's a parent herself who was home teaching her kids as well. So not only was she doing that, but she was also teaching our kids as well.
So now that nearly all of our children are back at school, how can we as parents make the most of that recent brush with learning from home?
I think we've got to remind ourselves that we're both on the same page. Both teachers and parents want the best for their kids. They want children to be successful in education in a very broad, well-rounded sense. And then I think during this pandemic, schools have had to find new ways of communicating with parents, because it's been vital that parents are adequately informed and they know what the school's expectations are with respect to home learning and the things that families can do to support their kids' education.
Mr. Simon, he did really beautifully. I just think you could pay a little bit more attention to detail. Is that something you could help him with?
Yeah, definitely. That's really good to hear that he's doing better.
I think that's been one of the silver linings for me, is I've never felt more in the loop. Is that something that you think can be carried on beyond this pandemic?
Oh, look, I'd like to think so, because I think the value of having well-informed parents who are on the same page with the school, who have got shared aspirations and expectations for the success of children in their schooling benefits both schools, children and the family.
So let's dive a bit deeper into that benefit, particularly for our children when parents have a stronger relationship with teachers.
Well, children will know that their parent is vitally interested in their schooling experience, which means that kids are more likely to be able to share what's going on at school. One of the frustrations for a lot of parents is that they can ask about how things are going at school, and when kids are tired and they've just got home from school, they sometimes are not ready to talk about it. But when children know that parents are really supportive of their learning and are in good contact with the school, kids are more likely to want to share what's going on to keep the parent informed.
Are there likely to be, I guess, some better outcomes for the children as well?
Oh, with respect to outcomes, it's pretty clear after years of research that when there is good homeschool engagement between parents and schools that children do better. They do better academically, they do better socially, they like going to school more, they have better attendance rates, they're more likely to be in a situation where children have a strong sense of their own personal capability, their belief in their capacity to tackle the learning tasks that they're exposed to, and they're more likely to want to continue with a lifelong approach to learning, including going on to further education after leaving school.
Well, sometimes even with the best intentions, there are times when that relationship between home and school can hit rocky ground. After the break, how to nurture a more respectful and effective collaboration between parents and teachers. Thanks for your company. Well, we're talking about building more positive partnerships between parents and the school community to help our children's education. Matt, sometimes there can be a real disconnect between opinions at home and opinions at school.
I think despite sometimes shared interests in children's learning and a recognition that having a good relationship between home and school is important, it's not always easy, and it's not always easy sometimes because of differences in expectations. What parents know about their children and their learning is different from what teachers and schools know about their child relative to all the other children in the same grade. So that you can get sometimes a difference in expectations of what parents are looking for and wanting from a school, and expectations that schools have of children and of parents. And so it's not surprising at times you can get some conflict.
Have you seen any specific examples of this over the years?
Oh, indeed. I mean, I've had teachers report to me, particularly high school teachers, that they've had to deal with things like a parent coming up, holding a child's assignment and waving it in front of the teacher's face and saying, "This is not a B, it's an A. And I've marked it myself, I know it's an A." And so you think about that as a difference in perspective. And it's very stressful. It's very stressful for teachers to have to deal with angry, demanding and entitled parents.
Absolutely, I can only imagine. Well, joining us now to talk a bit more about that is Dr. Julie Hodges, who's a clinical psychologist and education researcher. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Katrina. It's nice to be here.
Now, Julie, you've been looking into the impact of poor parent-teacher relationships, not on children, but on teachers. And what have you found?
Yes, our research has uncovered some surprising and really quite concerning outcomes. What it found was that difficult interactions with parents led to 50% of teachers feeling anxious and nervous. It also found that 70% of them said that it impacted their enjoyment of teaching, and a third of them had considered leaving the profession due to these difficult interactions.
Gosh, those numbers are much higher than I would have thought. Many teachers are clearly struggling there with difficult and stressful interactions with the families of students. So, Julie, why is it important for parents to play their part in building more positive collaborations?
Well, our research has shown, Katrina, that when parents and teachers build respectful and collaborative relationships, and they work towards common goals, that the outcome for children is optimal learning and well-being. So I guess it's useful to think about the relationship as a partnership, and each positive interaction as a deposit in the relationship bank account, really. It's important to maintain regular contact with the child's teacher. In that way, they know you, and the lines of communication are kind of kept open. And this can be as simple as a wave and a smile at pickup. I think it's important for parents to remember that schools are really busy places. So checking in with the teacher about when is the best time to contact them, and perhaps what their preferred mode of contact might be. So an initial email followed up by a Zoom call, we're all Zooming now, or a telephone call, is useful practice. And we're kind of really optimistic that the recent home-based learning experience will have fostered a newfound respect for the other's role.
I think definitely it's really important to reach out to your teacher. Even I'm a complete introvert and I don't like doing the meeting people for the first time, but it's for your kids' benefit. Reach out to them via email, say, hey, can we meet up for 10 minutes and talk about how my kid's going? And you don't have to go and meet the people face to face. I mean, a lot of what we did is online, meeting up with people online, which is what we are at the moment, aren't we? We're all online for everything.
And I guess the final thing is to let teachers know that you appreciate what they do. Sadly, communication can often only be in the context of there being problems.
So Matt, how important is this idea of being proactive and expressing your appreciation towards your children's teachers?
I think it's very important, particularly if you're able to highlight some benefit that you saw your child deriving from something that has been an interaction with the teacher or the learning experience. So when teachers get feedback that parents notice learning taking place with kids, it's really the most important thing. Rather than just a pat on the back for the teacher, it's actually what's really important to many teachers is that children are deriving benefit.
So we have animals, ocean, royalty. And what are all these? Animals. Very good.
Julie, on the flip side, what if parents have something less than positive to discuss with their child's teacher?
If concerns do arise, it's really important to act quickly. We all do molehills better than mountains. And think about ways of calmly sharing concerns without judgment or blame, and then work as a team to sort things out. So, that might mean saving the email that you dashed off at midnight that's full of emotional language and kind of changing that a little bit before you actually send it to the teacher in the morning.
Excellent advice. It's always good to take a pause on those kinds of emails. Well, coming up, we'll be sharing some ways parents can support their child's learning even when they're not at school.
What's that? Yes, a duck. Very good.
You're with us on Parenting in a Pandemic. Thanks so much for joining us. Matt and Julie, we are talking about the importance of building stronger, better ties between parents and teachers. But there are things parents can do outside of school to help support their children's learning journey. We might begin with you, Matt.
Well, I think these things that we do at home with our kids that really emphasise to them our interest in their schooling and their learning are just so important. And there are a number of very specific ideas that I think can help parents here.
And Julie, do you have some tips that we can put into action on this front?
Yes, look, there's a few things that I think are really important. One Matt mentioned really at the start of the segment today was talking to your child each day about what they're learning in the classroom.
That can often be tricky, Julie. I was thinking as Matt was saying that sometimes when I pick my kids up from school, you ask them how their day was and you get nothing from them. What advice do you have for drawing them out a little more?
Yes, Katrina, that really is frustrating, and a number of parents will give that sort of feedback. And I guess really it's, first of all, knowing your child best. So if they've had a tough day at school and they're in the car, asking them about what happened at school might not be the best time. Are they best after they've had a snack and a little relax? Are they more likely to talk to you at bedtime? Really, it's listening to them and listening for opportunities. We don't want this to be an inquisition where they go, oh no, mum or dad is going to talk to me and ask me about school now.
What other tips do you have for parents for how they can support their child's learning outside of the classroom?
So it's really useful to try and show how learning inside the classroom relates to life outside the classroom. So it can be simple things like if they're learning fractions, talking to them about how we divide the pizza up equitably. it's also really important that we show our children that we care about their school life. How we accept, or can we accept invitations to go to events at school or be part of the classroom learning. Again, I'm really hopeful that the most recent home-based learning experience means that this can be virtual connections. So we're all time poor, and it's really tricky often to get into school, but connecting to school assemblies or concerts or P&C meetings really via Zoom seems to be a much more acceptable option now we have all had this home-based learning experience.
What do you think, Matt, about parents becoming more engaged and involved in those community activities?
Our well-being as an adult is partly related to our social connections, and to be able to socially connect with the school community, the broader school community, is a terrific way of, on the one hand, feeling part of a community, but also doing things that promote your children's success at school, and at the same time being extremely helpful to a school in terms of being involved in perhaps coaching sports teams or assisting in some way with fundraisers and other kinds of events that are occurring in the school.
And Julie, there's a beautiful Zulu word for that, isn't there?
Yes, Ubuntu. It takes a village to raise a child.
It certainly does. It feels like that at times. Thank you so much for joining us, Julie.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, as Julie said, and as I think most of us can attest, it definitely does take a village to raise a child. And after the break, how we can build better partnerships with other adults in our children's lives.
Mr. Mittens was sitting in front of the fishbowl.
Fishbowl's right there.
The world at school and the world at home aren't two completely separate identities. You know, when it comes to building rapport with a teacher, you really should sort of look at it as being someone that's going to be intimately involved in your life. So probably have the same degree of rapport with them that you would with your GP or your psychologist, or anyone really that you're sort of dealing with your life with, particularly for the children.
So we've got our little village of our psychologist, our teacher, ourselves, and we're raising that child with our village.
Well, we've all been forced to embrace social distancing due to the COVID crisis. But Matt, I guess the paradox is that in many ways, our community's never been closer.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it, that people have been making new social connections with others, sometimes around the well-being of their children and the activities that the kids are involved in. And I think as children are returning back to school, the whole range of new activities are opening up again that children hopefully soon will be able to participate in.
So what should parents expect during that settling in period after so long?
Just reminding our kids and ourselves that to be organised and to try to avoid a stressful early morning rush as you're trying to get kids up and out and you're doing the hurry ups and they're doing the go slows, and it's, you know, that's
Have
the
you been
time.
to my house?
that's the time of the day where actually if you can get a routine working that involves kids doing things for themselves rather than having to rely on you as the adult to organise everything, it goes more smoothly, it's less stressful, it's quieter.
Now, community sport, that's coming back online. Now, this can often be a real source of tension, often between parents and other parents and their children's coach, can't it?
It certainly can, but remember, community sport is such a wonderful social connector for communities as well. There are lots of adults and kids who are really looking forward to be able to go back and play the sport that they love. But sometimes you can get a situation where a parent is so over-invested in that child's sporting activity that it turns into a pressurised situation. Remember, children are engaging in sport primarily to make friends and to enjoy it, to have fun. And if you put too much pressure on the kids or on the coach or on the administration of children's sport to be winning all the time, what it creates is kind of this level of stress and anxiety that is problematic, so that you get parents who are yelling things from the sideline, perhaps getting into negative interactions and abusing others. It doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't promote children's lifelong enjoyment of sport or physical activity.
Not great modelling for the kids either, I would have.
It's terrible modelling. If you think about being abusive towards your opponents or others who are involved in this as an activity, it's there because we want kids to have fun, to make friends, and to develop a lifelong commitment to physical activity.
So Matt, any final words on creating more positive partnerships between home and school?
I think when parents are engaged in children's learning, children are going to achieve better outcomes academically, socially, and in terms of their own emotional well-being. Positive homeschool communication is about building a real partnership with teachers and with schools for the benefit of all, particularly children. And it really helps when parents continue to support their child's learning, and a love of learning over a lifetime is what it's all about.
And I certainly think that after many weeks of homeschooling, we've all developed a lot more empathy for teachers, and that's a great place to start, isn't it?
I believe so.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Thanks so much for joining us again, Matt.
My pleasure.
And remember that any of those resources that we've referred to, they're all available online via Parenting in a Pandemic. You can also catch up on any episodes you've missed on 7plus. Until next time, stay safe and stay well.